HOA Karen tried to have me arrested, just to steal my land. If you've ever wondered what happens when a middle-aged woman with too much time and too little brain power gets a tiny taste of authority, smash that like button and buckle up. Comment below if you've ever dealt with someone who thinks a clipboard makes them the Supreme Court. 3 months ago, I inherited my grandmother's modest 2-acre property in what used to be a quiet neighborhood. Keywords, used to be. Apparently, while Grandma was peacefully tending her roses for 40 years, some developer decided the area needed upgrading and slapped an HOA on top of the newer houses like frosting on a burnt cake. Here's where it gets fun. My property isn't technically part of their HOA. It predates their little kingdom by about 4 decades. But try explaining property law to someone whose greatest legal achievement was probably getting out of a parking ticket by crying. Enter Linda Morrison, HOA president and part-time destroyer of human happiness. Picture a woman who looks like she asks to speak to the manager of her own reflection. She's got that aggressive bob haircut that screams, "I peaked in high school student government," and the kind of smile that makes you check your pockets to make sure your wallet's still there. The first time I met Linda was on a Tuesday morning. I was outside watering my grandmother's prized tomato plants when I heard the unmistakable sound of sensible shoes marching across gravel with military precision. She approached my fence like a general surveying enemy territory, clipboard clutched against her chest like a shield. "Excuse me," she called out in that tone people use when they're definitely not excusing anything. "I'm Linda Morrison, HOA president. We need to discuss your situation." My situation? I glanced around, wondering if she meant the thriving vegetable garden or the fact that I was wearing pajama pants at 10 a.m. Both seemed like reasonable life choices to me. "What situation would that be?" I asked, turning off the hose and giving her my full attention. Mistake number 1. She consulted her clipboard like it contained the secrets of the universe. Your property is in violation of HOA standards. The fence height, the garden placement, the lack of approved landscaping. It's all completely unacceptable. I blinked. Slowly. "Ma'am, I'm not part of your HOA. Everyone in Sunset Gardens is part of the HOA," she declared with the confidence of someone who'd never been wrong about anything, ever. "Except I'm not in Sunset Gardens. This property was here 40 years before your development existed." Her eye twitched. Just a little. Like a computer trying to process information that didn't compute. "That's impossible. Every property owner received the covenant documents. Every property owner in your development, maybe. But this land was grandfathered in before you folks decided to play neighborhood dictator." The silence stretched between us like a rubber band about to snap. Linda's grip on her clipboard tightened until her knuckles went white. I could practically hear the gears grinding in her head as she tried to reconcile reality with whatever alternative universe she'd been living in. "I'll need to see your property documents," she finally said, her voice dropping to that dangerously sweet register that usually precedes someone asking to speak to your manager. "No, you won't," I replied cheerfully. "Have a great day, Linda." I turned back to my tomatoes, but I could feel her standing there, radiating the kind of righteous indignation usually reserved for people who find out their coffee shop got their order wrong. After a moment, I heard those sensible shoes retreating, but something told me this wasn't over. Spoiler alert, it wasn't over. It wasn't even close to over. 2 days later, I found a letter taped to my front door. Not in my mailbox, mind you, but taped directly to the door like some medieval decree. The letterhead read Sunset Gardens HOA, official notice, in font so aggressive it probably had its own lawyer. The letter informed me that I had 30 days to bring my property into compliance with HOA standards or face appropriate legal action. It included a helpful list of violations, including unapproved fence height. My fence was apparently 2 inches too tall, non-conforming garden placement, Grandma's vegetables were in the wrong spot, apparently, and my personal favorite, failure to submit landscaping plans for approval. I read the letter twice, then did what any reasonable person would do. I laughed until my neighbors probably thought I was having some kind of breakdown. The next morning brought another surprise. I was enjoying my coffee on the front porch when a pickup truck pulled into my driveway. Out stepped a guy who looked like he'd rather be literally anywhere else. County code enforcement, according to his shirt. Morning, he said, looking apologetic before he even opened his mouth. Got a complaint about property violations. I'm supposed to do an inspection. Let me guess, I said, taking another sip of coffee. Linda Morrison called you? His expression told me everything I needed to know. Look, between you and me, this feels like neighbor drama more than actual code violations. But I have to check it out. Go ahead. I gestured around the property. Knock yourself out. 20 minutes later, he was back on my porch, shaking his head. Everything's up to code. Actually, your property's in better shape than most. Someone's wasting everyone's time here. Including yours, I imagine. Especially mine. He handed me his card. If she calls again about bogus violations, give me a heads up. This is the third frivolous complaint this month. After he left, I stood in my driveway wondering what Linda's next move would be. I didn't have to wait long. That afternoon, I was replacing a loose board on my back deck when I heard voices from the other side of my fence. Linda's voice, specifically, along with someone else I didn't recognize. Clearly exceeds the height restriction, Linda was saying. And that vegetable garden is completely out of compliance. I climbed onto my deck railing and peered over the fence. Linda was there with a man in an expensive suit, both of them examining my property like they were shopping for real estate. Excuse me, I called out. Can I help you folks? Linda jumped like she'd been caught stealing cookies. We're conducting a property assessment, she said, recovering quickly. On my property? Without my permission. The man in the suit stepped forward. I'm Richard Hayes, HOA legal counsel. We're documenting violations for our case file. What case file would that be? The one we're building to compel compliance with community standards, Linda chimed in, her confidence returning now that she had backup. I hopped down from the railing and walked to the fence. Well, Mr. Hayes, I hope your documentation includes the part where this property isn't subject to HOA jurisdiction. His expression shifted slightly, just enough to tell me Linda might not have mentioned that particular detail. Every property in this area falls under HOA governance, Linda insisted. Except mine, I said pleasantly, which was established in 1978, 26 years before your HOA existed. But hey, document away. I'm sure your legal research will be fascinating. Hayes cleared his throat. We'll need to verify the property boundaries and covenant applicability. You do that. My surveyor's report and title documents are on file with the county. Should make for interesting reading. They left, but something about Hayes' expression told me this was about to get more complicated. Linda was clearly the type of person who doubled down when proven wrong, and now she had legal counsel whispering in her ear. That evening, I did some research of my own. Turns out, Linda had been HOA president for 3 years, during which time she'd initiated 17 legal actions against various residents. Her track record wasn't great. She'd lost 14 of those cases, costing the HOA tens of thousands in legal fees. But here's what got interesting. I found property records showing that the HOA had been quietly purchasing non-compliant properties at below-market rates after harassing owners into selling. 3 properties in the past 2 years, all sold for about 60% of their assessed value. My grandmother's property was worth significantly more than the surrounding HOA-controlled lots because it was larger and had no deed restrictions. If someone wanted to expand the development or increase property values, my land would be quite the prize. The pieces were starting to fit together like a jigsaw puzzle designed by someone with a grudge and a real estate license. Friday morning brought the next escalation. I woke up to find orange spray paint on my fence. Someone had marked violation in big letters along the side facing the street. Classy. I was taking pictures of the vandalism when my neighbor Dave walked over. Dave lived in one of the HOA houses, but had always been friendly, even helping me move in. Linda's losing her mind over your property, he said, shaking his head. She's been going door to door, trying to rally support for legal action. Most people are ignoring her, but she's got a few allies. What kind of allies? The kind who think property values are more important than property rights. She's telling everyone your place is bringing down their home values. And is it? Dave laughed. Are you kidding? Your grandmother's property is the nicest one on the block. People drive by just to see her rose garden. That gave me an idea. A wonderfully petty idea. Monday morning, I was enjoying my coffee when I spotted Linda marching up my driveway with what appeared to be reinforcements. Two other women who had the same, "Let me speak to your manager," energy radiating from them like a force field. "We need to talk," Linda announced, as if she'd called ahead and scheduled an appointment. "No, we don't," I replied cheerfully. "But you're welcome to talk at me from the other side of the fence." "This is ridiculous," one of her companions huffed. She looked like Linda's slightly less aggressive cousin, the kind of person who probably left Yelp reviews about restaurants being too ethnic. "What's ridiculous?" I said, standing up from my porch chair. "Is vandalizing someone's property because you don't understand basic property law." "We didn't vandalize anything," Linda snapped. "Right. The orange spray paint just appeared by magic. Maybe it was the HOA fairy." The third woman, who'd been silent up to this point, decided to chime in. "Your attitude isn't helping anyone. We're trying to maintain community standards. And I'm trying to enjoy my morning coffee on my own property. Guess whose rights take priority here?" Linda's face was turning an interesting shade of red. "You can't just ignore community standards because you think you're special." "I'm not ignoring them. I'm not subject to them. There's a difference, though I understand the distinction might be challenging." "We'll see about that," Linda muttered, turning to leave. "Yes," I called after them. "We certainly will." That afternoon, things escalated in a way I hadn't expected. I was in my backyard working on Grandma's rose bushes when I heard car doors slamming in my driveway. Multiple car doors. I walked around front to find 2 police cars and 4 officers standing on my lawn. Linda was there too, of course, practically vibrating with excitement. "That's him," she was telling the officers, pointing at me like I was some kind of fugitive. "He's been harassing residents and vandalizing HOA property." The lead officer, a tired-looking sergeant who clearly had better things to do, approached me. "Sir, we've received complaints about harassment and property damage." "Have you now?" I glanced at Linda, who was trying very hard to look like a concerned citizen instead of someone having a public meltdown. "What property damage would that be?" "Someone spray-painted profanity on HOA signs," Linda interjected. "Profanity?" I raised an eyebrow. "What kind of profanity?" The sergeant consulted his notes. "Someone wrote, 'Not your property,' on the community entrance sign." I blinked. "That's profanity?" "It's vandalism," Linda insisted. "Ma'am," the sergeant said patiently, "that's not actually profanity. And technically, if his property predates the HOA, it might not be vandalism either." Linda's mouth opened and closed like a fish trying to argue with a shark. "As for harassment," the officer continued, turning back to me, "she says you've been intimidating residents. By existing on my own property? By refusing to comply with community standards," Linda butted in. The sergeant looked like he was developing a headache. "Sir, are you part of this HOA?" "No, officer. My property predates the development by several decades." "Do you have documentation?" "Absolutely. Would you like to see it?" 20 minutes later, after reviewing my title documents, survey reports, and tax records, the sergeant was having a very different conversation with Linda. "Ma'am, this man's property is clearly not subject to HOA jurisdiction. Filing false police reports is a serious matter." "It's not false," Linda protested. "He's disrupting our community. By existing? By refusing to follow the rules. Rules that don't apply to him." Linda's face was now approaching the color of a ripe tomato. "This is harassment. He's harassing us by not following the rules." The sergeant looked at her for a long moment, then turned to me. "Sir, have you threatened, intimidated, or harassed anyone?" "No, officer. I've been maintaining my property and minding my own business." "Have you damaged any HOA property?" "No, sir. Though someone did vandalize my fence with orange spray paint." Linda made a choking sound. "Ma'am," the sergeant said, turning back to Linda, "I'm going to strongly suggest you consult with a lawyer before making any more complaints. False reporting is a misdemeanor." After the police left, Linda stood in my driveway, looking like someone had just told her Santa Claus wasn't real. Her backup squad had mysteriously evaporated during the police interview. leaving her alone with her deflated righteousness. "This isn't over," she said finally. "No," I agreed. "I don't suppose it is." But something had shifted. The police visit was clearly meant to intimidate me, but it had backfired spectacularly. Linda had overplayed her hand, and now I was starting to wonder what else she might be desperate enough to try. That evening, Dave stopped by again. "Heard you had some excitement today." Linda decided to involve law enforcement in her property law education. "She's telling everyone the police are investigating you for harassment." The police investigated her for filing false reports. Dave grinned. "That's not the version making the rounds. She's also claiming you threatened her." "With what?" "Aggressive gardening." "She's scared," Dave said, his expression growing serious. "Scared people do stupid things. Stupider than spray painting violation on someone's fence." "Yeah," he said quietly. "Much stupider." Dave's warning proved prophetic. Tuesday morning, I woke up to find my mailbox completely destroyed, not just knocked over, but thoroughly demolished with what appeared to be a baseball bat or similar implement. The wooden post was splintered, the metal box was dented beyond recognition, and my mail was scattered across the front yard like confetti. But this wasn't random vandalism. Someone had left a note tucked under one of the mailbox fragments. "Comply or leave." I was photographing the damage when my phone rang. Unknown number, but I answered anyway. "Is this the property owner at 1247 Oak Street?" The voice was professional but cold. "Depends who's asking." "This is Michelle Carter from Carter & Associates. We represent the Sunset Gardens HOA. We'd like to discuss a settlement offer for your property." "A settlement for what?" "We're prepared to offer fair market value for your property to resolve this dispute amicably." I almost laughed. "There's no dispute. And my property isn't for sale. Mr. Henderson, I think you'll find our offer quite generous. $65,000, cash, closing within 30 days. My property was worth at least twice that, and she knew it. "Not interested. I'd encourage you to reconsider. Legal battles can be expensive and time-consuming." "For who?" "Excuse me. Legal battles can be expensive for who?" "Because your client doesn't have a legal leg to stand on." The line went quiet for a moment. "There are other considerations beyond the current dispute, such as property maintenance issues, potential code violations, the impact on neighborhood values. Sometimes it's easier to relocate than deal with ongoing complications." The threat was subtle but clear. "Are you suggesting someone might continue vandalizing my property if I don't sell?" "I'm suggesting that neighborhood tensions can escalate in unfortunate ways." "And you're recording this call, right? For quality assurance." Click. She hung up. I immediately called the police and reported the mailbox destruction along with the threatening phone call. The responding officer was the same sergeant from yesterday, and he looked even more tired. "Let me guess," he said, examining the demolished mailbox. "HOA troubles?" "Linda's escalating." "This is destruction of federal property," he said, referring to the mailbox. "That's a felony. Any chance you'll actually investigate it?" He sighed. "I'll file a report. But unless we catch someone in the act or find witnesses, it's hard to prove." "What about the threatening phone call? Was it recorded?" "No." "Then it's he said, she said." He handed me a report number. "But keep documenting everything. If this escalates further, we'll need a paper trail." After he left, I sat on my porch considering my options. Linda had moved from petty harassment to actual crimes. The settlement offer suggested this wasn't just about HOA compliance. Someone wanted my property badly enough to break laws to get it. That's when I decided to go nuclear. I called my lawyer, not some local attorney, but the one who'd handled my grandmother's estate. Someone with federal court experience and a reputation for making other lawyers cry. "James," I said when he answered, "I need you to file a harassment lawsuit." "Against who?" "The Sunset Gardens HOA, their president Linda Morrison, and their legal counsel Richard Hayes." "What's the basis?" I explained the situation, from the initial harassment to the destroyed mailbox and threatening phone call. "This sounds like a pattern of intimidation designed to force a property sale," he said. "That could be extortion under federal law." "How federal are we talking?" "If they're using mail, phone, or internet to make threats related to property transactions, it's wire fraud. If they're destroying mail delivery systems, that's destruction of federal property. If they're conspiring to defraud you of property value through intimidation, that's racketeering. So very federal, and very expensive for them. Good. Wednesday morning brought the next escalation, and this time Linda had apparently decided subtlety was overrated. I woke up to find construction barriers blocking my driveway, complete with road work, do not enter signs. I called the city public works department. No, sir, the confused clerk told me. We don't have any scheduled work on Oak Street. Those barriers aren't ours. I took pictures, then called the police. While waiting for them to arrive, I noticed Linda watching from her window across the street. When our eyes met, she quickly pulled her curtains shut. The police removed the barriers, but the sergeant warned me that things were clearly escalating. She's testing boundaries, he said, seeing how far she can push before facing real consequences. What happens when she finds those boundaries? Hopefully she backs down. But people like this, they don't always make rational decisions. That afternoon, I got a call from my lawyer. I filed preliminary injunctions against the HOA and Linda Morrison personally. They're prohibited from contacting you, entering your property, or interfering with your use and enjoyment of the land. How long before they're served? They should be getting the papers right about now. As if on cue, I heard screaming from across the street. Linda's voice, specifically, reaching decibel levels that probably violated noise ordinances. I think they got them, I told James. Good. Now we wait to see if they're smart enough to back down. They weren't. Thursday morning, I found my water line had been cut. Not damaged by accident, but deliberately severed with clean tool marks. The cut was right at my property line, just inside the easement. This was no longer harassment. This was criminal sabotage of utilities. I called the police, the water company, and my lawyer, in that order. By noon, my front yard was full of investigators, utility workers, and very serious people taking very detailed photographs. This is felony vandalism of public utilities, the detective told me. Whoever did this could face 5 years in prison. Any suspects? He looked across the street, where Linda was peeking through her curtains again. Working on it. Friday morning brought the grand finale, though it started quietly enough. I was working in my garden, enjoying the peace after getting my water restored, when Dave hurried over looking panicked. She's lost it, he said without preamble. Linda's completely lost it. More than usual? She spent all night calling HOA members, telling them you're going to sue everyone for millions of dollars. She's convinced half the neighborhood that their houses will be seized to pay damages. That's not how civil lawsuits work. Try explaining that to people who get their legal knowledge from TV shows. What's she planning? Dave glanced around nervously. She's organized some kind of citizen's arrest for this afternoon. She's convinced everyone you're trespassing on HOA property. My own property. She's telling people the boundaries are wrong, that your survey is fake, that you're squatting on community land. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. Dave, you might want to stay inside this afternoon. Why? Because when someone's this desperate, they tend to do things that end up on the evening news. At 2 p.m., they came. Not just Linda, but about 15 neighbors, all marching up my driveway like some kind of suburban militia. Linda was in the lead, naturally, carrying what appeared to be a citizen's arrest form she'd probably printed from the internet. By the authority of the Sunset Gardens Homeowners Association, she announced loudly enough for the entire neighborhood to hear, "You are under citizen's arrest for criminal trespass." I was sitting on my front porch, sipping iced tea and watching the show. "Linda, this is my property. This is HOA property," she screamed. "Your so-called documents are fraudulent." According to who? According to this. She waved what looked like a property survey. "The real property lines put your house on HOA land." I stood up slowly, pulling out my phone. "And where did you get this survey?" "From a licensed surveyor." "Which surveyor?" She hesitated. Just for a second. But it was enough. "You had someone survey my property without permission?" "We had someone survey HOA property to determine the correct boundaries." "You mean you hired someone to create a fake survey showing property lines that don't exist?" Her face went through several interesting color changes. "It's not fake. Linda, I hate to break this to you, but commissioning fraudulent documents to support a property claim is, well, it's fraud. That's when she snapped completely. I'm making a citizen's arrest, she shrieked, rushing toward me. You're all witnesses. He's trespassing on community property. Several things happened at once. Linda grabbed my arm, trying to drag me off my own porch. 3 of her supporters started filming with their phones. The rest of the crowd began shouting various legal-sounding phrases they'd clearly learned from television. And my lawyer, who'd been parked down the street waiting for exactly this moment, started recording everything from his car. Linda, I said calmly, while she tugged ineffectively at my arm, you're committing assault and battery on my own property. It's not your property. Actually, it is. And you're doing this in front of 15 witnesses who are all recording video. That's when she noticed the phones, all pointing at her, all capturing her spectacular meltdown in high definition. Turn those off, she screamed at her own supporters. Stop recording. But it was too late. The internet had already gotten hold of Linda Morrison, and the internet is not forgiving. By evening, videos of Linda's citizen's arrest attempt were trending on social media with titles like HOA Karen goes full psycho and when property law meets mental breakdown. The comments were uncharitable. My lawyer filed additional charges: assault, battery, criminal harassment, and conspiracy to commit fraud based on the fake survey. The HOA's insurance company dropped them faster than a hot potato, leaving Linda and the board personally liable for all legal costs. The fake surveyor turned out to be Linda's brother-in-law, who'd created the fraudulent documents for free but had no actual surveying license. That added forgery and impersonating a licensed professional to the growing list of charges. 3 months later, Linda Morrison was no longer HOA president. She was facing criminal charges, civil lawsuits, and personal bankruptcy. The HOA board voted to dissolve rather than face continued legal liability, freeing all the residents from their covenant restrictions. My property values went up 30% when the HOA dissolved. Linda's house went into foreclosure 2 months later. I bought it, not to live in. I love my grandmother's house exactly as it is. But Linda's former property makes an excellent rental, and the income helps cover my legal fees. I kept one thing from her house: the original HOA charter documents. They're framed now, hanging in my workshop next to a photo of Linda being arrested for assault. Sometimes, late at night when I'm watering my grandmother's roses, I can hear someone crying in the house next door. But it might just be the wind. The new tenants are a lovely young couple who grow their own vegetables and painted their house a beautiful shade of purple. Linda would have hated it. That makes me smile every single day. Like this story if you think karma has a sense of humor, and comment below if you've ever seen someone's own stupidity become their worst enemy. Because sometimes, the best revenge is just letting people destroy themselves while you provide the popcorn. Thank you for being with us. Please share in the comments where you are watching from and whether you liked everything, and see you next time.